Hello and welcome to episode 215 of the Cincinnati Soccer Talk podcast. This is your host, Brian Weigel, in the palatial estate in Liberty Township, Ohio. Pleased to be talking, well, not really pleased to be talking FC Cincinnati. It is what it is, but I'm joined here with some of my great friends. We're going to call him Mr. Fuzzy until he gets an HD camera. Clay Winstead, how you doing, Clay?
I'm doing fantastic. North London is lily white. I watched Christian Pulisic deliver a cross to Olivier Giroud that could only be described as pregnancy-inducing. It's been a great day for soccer. I've been able to wipe the FCC game out of my memory, and I'm excited to be here.
Better not be pregnancy-inducing. I really don't want a fourth kid. Oh, man. Speaking of nightmares, welcome back from the lost city of Atlantis. Ken Hecker, how you doing, pal?
Hey, it's good to be back. Long layoff. Let's see if I can knock the rust off. And do I end up looking like Columbus, or do I end up looking like Cincinnati on this podcast? I have a feeling I will be the FCC of this podcast today, though. So thanks. Good to be back, though.
Well, normally when we have you on, we want to discuss salary caps, moving players in, players out. And there's quite a bit of people that have been wanting to do that already. So if you have any questions for the man, myth, the legend, the roster cap guru, Ken Hecker, make sure to dial in at 513-399-KICK. And I think we have a third gentleman here this evening. We are very excited to welcome back Bill Wolf. How are we doing, Mr. Wolf?
Oh, man, I am being massively stretched right now. You know, I am always Mr. Positive about FCC, and it is really difficult to be Mr. Positive right now. I'm going to do my best. I think I'm going to fail.
I think you're going to fail. Well, you know, the club did do something right today. A friend of ours, Matthew Long, was awarded 2 free tickets to the West End Stadium for the 2021 season by a Mr. Jeff Birding, as well as First Financial Bank today. And that was because he's the first ever season ticket holder of FC Cincinnati. So that was pretty cool to see. So it's nice to see some friends actually getting some nice stuff happening right now. So, well, guys, thank you very much for joining us, as I said, on episode 215 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We're going to have a pretty busy show for you guys tonight. A little bit different format than what we're used to, considering we're talking about a game, but we're trying to switch things up a little bit. So please give us your feedback, your thoughts. We have some great shows at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. This past week, we had Talking Tactics with Coach Goff. He had special guest DJ Schweitzer on, and they really broke down the FC Cincinnati versus Columbus crew match. And we're going to try to leave a bunch of that in-depth analysis to that show. We're going to cover general topics here. So we will briefly recap the game, but then we're going to go into kind of a new debate segment, and then we'll move on to the Atlanta preview. But of course, we also have March to Match Day with Boston Razzle Dazzle Brazzle and then the evil twin Brad Weigel. They interviewed Jason Longshore, I believe. I might have got that wrong. Of Soccer Down Here, a great podcast covering Atlanta United. So go check them out, download them as well, and you'll hear a lot of in-depth analysis on that upcoming game. But we'll briefly talk about that, as well as some miscellaneous news, and then, of course, your listener questions. So it's going to be a good evening, and, we're here to inform, connect, and entertain. So if you want to call in, 513-399-KICK, 513-399-KICK. We'd love to hear from you. Give us your thoughts on the game, what you'd like to change, what you'd like to see happen in the future, what's progress to you, and then maybe a little bit of perspective. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So, guys, let's dive down briefly into the recap of FC Cincinnati versus Columbus. Started really well. We had some great chances. Kikuta Mane was caught offside early from, I believe, a great pass from Sem Diong. Diong had a couple bright moments in this game, not too many, because he didn't really get much time on the ball. He had another great chance in the 10th minute, nearly slipping in a ball to Adrian Reguetin. And then, of course, a couple minutes later, in the 12th minute, kind of the game changed. Reguetin had a great ball in. He beat Wormgore. He literally broke the guy's ankle. You heard a pop. But as opposed to having that killer instinct in attacking the goal, he decided to slow down play and kick the ball out of bounds and kind of concede possession back to Columbus Crew. So, Clay, when you saw that originally, we were watching the game together on our live stream. What was your initial reaction to Regaton kicking the ball out?
Hindsight is 2020. And so you want to say like, oh, he should have taken the shot on goal. But in the moment, you see clearly what Regaton must have heard. I mean, we could hear it on the field mics, let alone what he must have heard standing right next to him. You see him go down. You hear that pop. It's pure sportsmanship. You kick the ball out of it. I didn't question it in the moment. I mean, obviously looking back, I kind of wish maybe he would have taken a shot on goal there, knowing how the scoreline ended up going. But in the moment there, I mean, there's no way to know that. And for him, I think it was it just speaks to his character and his sportsmanship to just say, oh, something happened here. Let me just play the ball out. In the moment, I didn't think anything of it. It's easy to look back on it and question his decision, but I think he made the right move.
Now, Ken, I mean, come on now. We don't win games by being nice guys. We win games by being cutthroat. Columbus Crew, they didn't just hand the ball back to us. They booted it all the way back down the field and made us build it up again. You got to go for the killer instinct, right?
I 100%. I'll just say this. That's why we're Cincinnati Soccer Talk. I disagree, Clay. You go for the kill. You do. You can't accept that. And I'd rather get a dirty goal and win than give up 4 clean goals and lose. So I mean, but
how would you feel if that was Watson's ankle? If Watson's ankle was
don't tell me how I feel. How would you feel if you're the other team?
I'm just saying.
Well,
maybe I played too many games in the YMCA, but if that was an FC Cincinnati player, I would have hoped that the Columbus Crew guy would have played the ball out of the field.
Go back to the Y.
Clay, I thought you'd be more of an upward guy. Bill, you had something to chime into?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to lean with Clay on this one a little bit. I mean, I think the situation's a little weird for us to grasp. I mean, in a normal game situation, as soon as that ball crossed behind the back line and it was at Regaton's feet, there would have been 30,000 people screaming, and he probably wouldn't have thought twice about taking that shot. In what probably feels like a scrimmage out there, or some sort of a inner team thing, even
pre-season
at some level, preseason match, not even that, because we have people come to those. So it feels like a scrimmage or a closed, venue scrimmage. That pop was probably freaking loud. And I can just imagine that he may have just been more just shocked by the noise and the scream that the guy made and just kind of stunned by it. And then just because he didn't kick it out immediately. He kind of stood there kind of like, whoa,
yeah,
what should I do?
And then he kicked it out, Okay. And I think once you stopped and would pause like that, it would have been, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not. It would have been an asshole move to kick it in once he stopped. Right. I mean, if it had all been in fluid motion, he just kept going and he could have said, I didn't really realize how hurt he was. That's fine. But when you stopped,
sure, at
that point, it was done. He had made his decision.
That's Bill being nice and just calling me an ass.
I was just saying, at moments like this, I kind of think, what would Ledesma have done? And I think Ledesma would have definitely gone for the cutthroat move. Miss you, pal. All right. So the first, 15, 20 minutes of the game, FC Cincinnati looked promising. Mm-hmm. We're kind of like, wow, Coach Jaap Stam, all-star, turning around, getting things going the right direction. And then it fell apart quickly. 26th minute, Lucas Zalarayan free kick that was set up by basically Harris Medunjanin losing his mark in the midfield. The midfield kind of getting out of shape. Frankie Amaya coming over and essentially clearing out the player. And then, of course, Zalarayan put a worldly golazo off the near post. I mean, I don't think anybody can really be upset. Yeah, it was something that should be, SC top 10 first highlight every day of the week. Of course, things happen really quick with FC Cincinnati. The wheels started to fall off right away. They had another chance coming down the field. Nagbe laid the ball off to Yunus Mokhtar, who had a great game as well for Columbus. And then Nagbe, and this is where I get upset with FC Cincinnati, is how much their midfield would move and pull our guys out of position. Nagbe made a nice run away from Mokhtar. Medunjanin came off, followed him, gave Mokhtar some space, and then that gave him an additional ounce of time to loft the ball through to Jesse Zardes. Of course, this is where, as FC Cincinnati fans, we get very disappointed as Abdul Salam was high up the pitch. Kendall Waston doesn't even really pay attention to Zardes. He gets right through and scores a goal. So FC Cincinnati went from having a very good first 20, 25 minutes to down 2-0 after 31, 32 minutes. So it was very disappointing. Columbus had a couple other chances throughout the rest of the half, and they kind of lost control. So, Bill, what did you make of that first half? And of course, the mentality of conceding that second goal so quickly.
Yeah, I got a couple of things I'd like to throw in there. First off, I've heard it said multiple times, and you said it, which was, we had a good, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 25 minutes, or I think it was even said like 29 minutes or whatever. However you want to measure that up. I agree from a score sheet standpoint. It was 0-0 at that point, aside from the one goal, and that was a Galazzo goal. So, great for them. Okay. I mean, you could measure us as having done well from a scoreline standpoint or from what happened with Cincinnati, but I don't know that I really agree that we had a great 20 minutes. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One is I think the would be our left side, but their right side, they were bombing up that side with Diaz, and he was just making, piecework of
Greg
Garza, but Pedersen was who I was going to say, Pedersen and Garza. And he just was coming around behind both those guys and basically having, his ability to take shots across the goal mouth over and over again, it seemed like. And then, we did have a couple opportunities. It was nice, but I would say if I really think about that game, I think Columbus was basically not sure what they were going to see. And they were kind of just playing a little bit, they had a little bit of a plan of bombing up that side, but they were kind of waiting to see. And and they have a quality midfield. They have a very good quality midfield. Mm-hmm. But once they figured us out, then they just basically took over. I mean, they dominated the midfield, and that was very clear. Once they started scoring goals, our midfield was completely out of the game. And I don't know that I would say we had a great 20 minutes. I would say that Columbus waited until they figured out where our weak spots were, and then they exploited them the rest of the game.
So I had this thought kind of going later on in the show, and that was kind of touching on our starting lineup a little bit. And we had I would say a shocking starting lineup, and you can kind of speak to this, Ken, but we had Adrian Reketin in that forward position as opposed to Jurgen Locadia. You had Kubo on the left wing, Kakuta Mane on the right wing. Then you had the midfield trio of Sim de Jong, Harris Medunanen, Frankie Amaya, left back Greg Garza, left center back Tom Pedersen, right center back Kendall Waston, who's traditionally the left center back, and then you had a right back of Saad Abdul Salam. So what did you make of those, original starting players in this opening match?
Well, I didn't disagree with the player selection per se. Maybe the placement. I wasn't sold on Regeton up at the 9 position. Cruz not being in there is just a big miss to me. So I think it was just a piecemeal, sort of like what was left after injuries, and the Cruz Amaya. I don't know what was going on in practice. I got to give Stom some benefit of the doubt on him trying things out and seeing what he's got, but I wasn't disappointed in it. Just put it that way. It just was confusing, and who were the right pieces? Vasquez up top probably would have been my initial selection, and Cruz being on. Those were probably the two pieces that I sit there and go, I would have figured a way to put those two pieces in there. So.
Yeah, I think when everybody saw the lineup, everybody was thinking, that Regeton was going to be the right wing. And then it was really a question of whether Kubo or Mane were the center. And most people were leaning towards Kubo because they've seen him play that thing. I know I saw Mane as a striker in the past. I thought maybe they might actually put him up top just from a speed standpoint. And then I don't think anybody I ever saw predicted that Regeton was going to play a false 9 and sit there. And not that he did a terrible job, but it definitely was a weird tactic for how the game played out. So.
Now, Clay, do you think, and Coach made this mention, do you think maybe Regeton started up top versus, moving Kuba out of position or moving De Jong out of position because Locadia could be coming back sooner?
Yeah, that's
not that we have inside information.
No, not at all. I that was what did confuse me a bit. Was Mane isn't a natural right winger anyway. He usually plays on the left side, and that's what he mostly played for us last season. And Regatin, at least in his career, is mostly a right winger. So you played two people out of position. I guess you'd want Kubo to be in where you see him eventually. So that makes sense why you'd keep him at left wing. So that's why I can kind of maybe see, that inclusion of Locadia, or maybe he sticks with Vasquez going forward, whatever it is. But you see more of that Locadia, true number 9. So you want Kubo to be comfortable out left before you bring that in. And I guess at that point, it just depends on if Stom thinks Regatin is a better finisher than Mane. I think Coach talked about it during our live watch along. It should have been a very fluid front three anyway. So who was central and who was wide probably shouldn't have mattered. I don't think
it didn't seem to work that way.
But see, our offense wasn't the issue. Our front three was never the issue. It's, as we will talk about going forward, it was our midfield and our defense that really let us down. The front three, Mane had a decent chance. Regatin made some good runs going forward. They weren't really an issue for me. So I wasn't it was a little confusing to see Regatin playing that centrally. But after the game, I wasn't bothered by any means.
Okay, good
I think answering the question there directly though, who's our front four? Who's our front four starting if everybody's healthy? If Regatin is part of our starting 11 in the front four, then it makes more sense to leave him in that right position if you want to talk about Locadia coming back. And that's a little bit why I actually thought Mane might be our striker up top, just because I would expect Kubo to start. I would expect potentially Regatin to start. And then you need somebody to fill in that position. Maybe Vasquez, as Ken said, would make sense. Or when Mane was in the list, maybe you would throw Mane up there just because you don't want to change the other pieces.
Yeah. That's all good points. Now let's kind of dive back down into the game, and then we're gonna give a couple points that we liked about the game, points that we hated, and then we'll get into our debate section a little bit later. But going into that second half, it got worse real quick in the game. The game was over by the 60th minute, but 10 minutes into the half, there was a point where FC Cincinnati might have thought the ball kind of went over the touchline. I don't know if they stopped running or what happened, but Lucas Zelleran got the ball back, passed back in. He created a little space with the turn. Theme of the night, beat Harris Madunan in that midfield, had tons of space and time, basically left by himself, was able to loft the ball right over the back line in between Tom Pedersen and Kendall Waston to Zardes, who potentially was offside. I don't know. Didn't seem like a great read by Waston, and he had a great finish past Titan. So 3-0 there. Very disappointing defending in that midfield. And then just 5-6 minutes later, the death nail. Again, Lucas Zelleran, you've heard him the whole night, shifts the ball left to Hector Jimenez, draws out Abdul Salam. Waston was doing well this time guarding Zardes, was right on his pocket, but Tom Pedersen was right next to him as well. Waston probably should have cut out a little bit on Yunus Mukhtar, who had acres of space, got the ball, picked his head up. Beautiful curler past Titan, game over. 4-0. So after that, not to get too much into it, both sides had massive line changes. Columbus Crew literally put on some of their academy players, and I believe that was Coach Craig Berhalter's son got to go in there for his first debut. And but that was kind of all she wrote. We really couldn't generate any other chances, even with our setups in that second half. So really disappointing night down in Orlando, and one that FC Cincinnati will look to improve on. So this is the new part. I want all three of you guys to give me a thumbs down, which was a negative thought that you didn't like, and then we'll come back with try to end it on a positive note, a thumbs up, a positive. So we're going to go with Clay to start off. What was the one negative thing you kind of saw?
We talked about this a lot on the live show, and Coach really dived in deep on talking tactics, and his interview with his discussion, I guess I should say, with DJ Switzer was really enlightening. And I think it really emphasized to me the dynamic between Sim de Jong and Harris Madunan and Frankie Amaya in the midfield. It just was lacking. I don't know. They talked it to death, and they can explain it better than I could. But there's definitely something missing in either how they were set up, what their roles were, or whether or not they should work together at all. And so I think that's my thumb down generally. So I think most of the goals, as Coach Goff kind of walked us through it in those shows, midfield is so vital to how the defense works, just as the whole team. I mean, defense really is a 10-man, as an 11-man effort. But particularly with us and the goals that we conceded, the 3-man defense, whether they're out of position, whether they lack discipline, that was just generally the thumbs down for me, is and the fact that Sim DeYoung had so few chances and so few passes. It really was disappointing. But
Don't
also,
take all of them now.
I know. But my thumbs up actually comes from the same group, because I love what Frankie is doing. I know he had a few out of position spots that led to a goal or two, but you can see the work he's putting in, and you can see the development he's going through. And he was asked to do a whole lot yesterday. And not all of it went well. I'm not saying that, but you can tell that he seems to be growing in that role. And we're not exactly sure where he's going to be, whether he's like a true number 6, like an N'Golo Kante, or he's just a small kind of bulldozer who just covers all that space, or if he's whatever he ends up being, you can see the progression already happening, and you can see where he's finding those spaces to excel. And so even though I think the midfield was troublesome, I can see his development starting, and that is a thumbs up for me.
I agree with you, and Coach Stom actually agreed with you. He had an interview this afternoon with I believe Tyler Snipes, and he literally singled out Frankie Amaya's quality of his play. He's seen it in practice, and he had a glowing review. So that's probably why we didn't see Alan Cruz. Let's go with Ken. Ken, what was your thumbs down on the evening?
Well, after Clay's dissertation there and taking everything, I agree with everything you said, Clay, because actually that was a lot of mine. But I'm gonna stick to my thumbs down and let you go to Bill. Which my thumbs down is letting Zardes score twice. This team has given up 5 goals to Zardes in 3 games. Can we not just stop that guy? I don't think he's dynamic in any way. I think he makes great runs. We can't let him beat us. Make somebody else beat us. That's my thumbs down. Is from the midfield. I agree completely with what Clay was saying, and we can go into it maybe a little bit later more if need be. But Zardes is my thumbs down, just letting that guy score. I don't want to see him score ever again.
Bill Wolf, what was your thumbs down?
I'm going to go with, I think our team was lacking some critical leadership in this game. Mm-hmm. I think, we can get into various parts of the pitch that things failed in, but I think things will fail, things will go wrong. And what I felt was we lacked leadership in a couple areas. One, obviously our back line was not organized. It didn't flow as a unit. We've talked about situations where, if this person had shifted and that person had picked up this person, if they would work together instead of kind of working a little bit more individually, like I'm on this guy, kind of scenarios, then we may have been more effective as a unit in the defense. And I think defensively, it just didn't seem like that was a cohesive unit. And not to bring out names, but the leader back there for me is Waston. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think he had a great game as it is. And maybe that was part of why he was out of his mentality, but I didn't see him giving a lot of direction. I didn't see him moving players around. I didn't see him controlling that back line in a sensible fashion that would allow it to be more effective. And then, I think we talk about the midfield a lot. And I think, there were definitely issues there. For me, I would probably kind of lean into Madunian there. Obviously, he is kind of one of the more senior members of that back line. He should be stepping up. He should be controlling that midfield more. He has a very young green player in Amaya with a lot of energy and a lot of spunk. He needs to help him. And I just don't think that that leadership was there enough to get the results that we needed. And I hope that these voices get a little bit louder in the future. In addition, I think when things go wrong and people start to hang their heads, which we saw after goal number 1, but really after goal number 2, thank goodness for the end of the half, because it could have been really worse if it kept going. But they dropped their heads pretty hard after goal number 2, and that's where the leadership really needs to be there on the field. Those guys need to stand up and they need to say, lift your heads and let's play soccer. The game's starting over at this point. Let's just make sure they don't score again. And we didn't see that. We just saw basically the team deflate, and that again, that I think that's a leadership issue. So.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing I would say is I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get to see more Sem de Jong on the ball. So I really wanted to see that and see how he goes, forward. He looked a little rusty, but still hopeful considering I saw some of his vision on a couple of those earlier plays. Let's go back to you, Ken, and give me your quick thumbs up.
Well, you just stole one of them. I was going to say there's not a lot. I was going to say Sem de Jong's vision was pretty good as far as at least him picking out a couple of passes. The other one that I thought was Gutman replacing Garza. I think he showed a little bit more steel, I guess is the best word, and the ability to get up and down the sideline. I think one of the goals from Stam was to play some inverted wingers and have the width come from Salam and Garza, and I just don't think those guys were able to retreat back fast enough, or there wasn't enough cover for them. Again, it's a whole team communication failure at that point. But I thought Gutman he showed some steel again to maybe give us some hope and maybe be able to buy him his loan, purchase him from Celtic if possible. So
yeah, we'll see what happens. Bill, what's your positive note?
I'm going to kind of slide in pretty similar to Clay. For me, I know that Amaya didn't have a perfect game, but he's still a shining bright point for me. Again, I think, some of the issues are leadership and direction from people who needs to mentor him more and kind of, help him understand when to drop back and things like that. But I think if you just look at him as a whole, I mean, he kind of came in, kind of looking like maybe a little bit of a creative person, maybe a 10 at some level. He's played an 8, but at the end of the game, he was kind of dropping lower, maybe even in a 6. He seems to just basically be, what can I do? What can I, tell me what I can do on the field and I will do it. And he does his best, to do everything. I think there were a lot of times where maybe it was his fault that the ball, it was an opening that got created, but, we had a lot of speed issues in the midfield, and Amaya just ran down plays when they got past other people, and he fouled people. I mean, he's 5'0", and he was our destroyer in the midfield. I mean, he was the most physical person and the most likely to foul and receive a foul or whatever. So, I mean, to me, there's just so much there, and it just needs some shining up a little bit, and I think he's going to be a diamond. So,
yeah, I mean,
we'll see what happens. We'll hold on. We got a lot of things to still talk about. Love to see Frankie chase down Ezekiel Barco this week. Quick hit, real quick. How did we not talk about Yuya Kubo? I thought he was one of the brightest points on the pitch over the evening, and the fact that he didn't give up through the entire match. He still put balls in there. Looked like he was marshaling the group around, giving that leadership that I was hoping De Jong might give. So we'll see what happens there, but I think he's a bright spot so far for the first 3 matches of this I would say young or old season, however you call it. It's felt like a couple of years, but hey. Real quick, before we get on to our new debate segment, I want to give a quick shout out to all you great supporters of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. You are the reason why we're here doing this. One of the biggest reasons why we're able to get some of the new equipment for our new shows, as well as the live shows that we had, or that the live watch along that we had with the Columbus Crew match on Saturday. I don't think we're going to do that again for Thursday, but hopefully we will next Wednesday for the finale versus New York Red Bulls. So it was great to be able to do that. Clay and I and Coach Brad Goff had a great time. So real quick, thank you guys to Tom Rose, Matt Adamczyk, Mike Hudson, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Matt Imholt, Matthew Long, Joe Coling, and Tara Mullins. Thank you so much for your support, and to learn on how you can support CST, please head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/. So as I mentioned, we are trying to do a debate. We'll see if we are nice or disagree or whatever, but I'm just going to try to pose about 5 or 6 different topics that I kind of saw throughout the game that is maybe we can pit the two of you guys together. I bet you this is going to be a lot of Clay versus Ken Hedger. We'll see what happens here. I'm joking. But so I just the first segment, and I'm going to let Ken Hedger go with this one first. How can we play this midfield of Sem de Jong, Frankie Amaya, and Harris Medunjanin? And I know Bill said, you have Frankie as a midfield destroyer, yet he's not really a destroyer. He just makes the fouls because he's a step too late. And I think he can be. He's learning.
He's tiny. It's just funny. He's a destroyer.
So is Conte.
Can we?
Size doesn't matter.
So
I'm asking Ken, how we are missing a ball winner there.
I don't think we can. I'm just going to come out and flat out say it. This is where I've sat there and I've now questioned, and questions maybe are a harsh word, but Gerard and having Medunjanin back there and knowing he's not as mobile as possible, putting a second midfielder that let me just say, not quite the workhorse in Sem de Jong, makes it very difficult for a third midfielder to cover all the space. Mm-hmm. So either we have to come up with a system that works with that. Sem de Jong has to work for the ball. That was one of my disappointments. Is I didn't feel like he made himself available, found space to get open. I don't think he did enough work rate. And I don't think that's his game. So I seriously doubt right now whether we can do this with Harris and Sem de Jong in the middle. So, I mean, you can counter back.
Yeah, you were right, Brian, to think that this might be a thing. Honestly, why would we make a judgment after 90 minutes with Sem? It's the first game. It honestly, our expectation should be preseason. This is a preseason match for Jaap Stam.
So you asked the question, why should we make that judgment? I mean, you seriously asked that question. I'll answer that with, it was stated by national pundits, this is what's going to occur, and that's what occurred. So even though it was only 90 minutes, it was already, produced out there
right.
as far as occurrence. So I mean, it seems like it can be a reality. That's my question.
We can look at the tactics of the situation, and someone like Frankie Amaya, or you could argue it should be Alan Cruz instead of Frankie. I'm willing to have that debate potentially, but whoever is that third midfielder, so many times Coach and DJ would go through it. Frankie was so far up the pitch next to Sem, and then was running back to help Harris. Harris, I think, is asked to do so much. We forget when he was at Philadelphia, he was in a diamond setup in the midfield. He was in a 4-man center midfield setup at Philadelphia. He had people on either side of him to help him on defense. And now you're asking him to be man marking potentially one of the best number 10s in MLS, in Zella Ryan, start the game. Frankie's high up the field. We're forgetting that Jaap is still figuring out how this midfield should work. We can't necessarily we shouldn't just jump to conclusions that Sem and Harris can't work together.
So the question was, can those three though?
Maybe Frankie just needs to drop back further and help Harris more on defense and let Sem play as a more traditional number 10. Yeah. Maybe it's out. I just don't think we should jump to these conclusions right away.
I'm going to bring Bill into this. So is this more on Bill? Is this more on the players not performing their roles, or is this Stam? It's my Ohio accent. Stam not setting up the team correctly.
I think there was definitely some mistakes made tactically. I mean, I think if you saw Medunjanin was man marking, the Cruz 10, right? I'm not going to say his name right. I'm not going to try. But anyway, too many Z's and things in there. But anyway, and he changed tactics, and that's going to happen. He's going to learn. He's going to figure out what his players can do. Obviously, we had a press going on, right? We had Frankie going forward a lot early on, and then tried to double back and defend at the same time. So he was, truly box to box in that sense, that he was both attacking and defending and running his little feet off. But I mean, so yeah, I think there was some tactical errors. From a standpoint of the players themselves, there was a lot of injuries, so he had to make do at with not as much time probably to make some of those decisions. But in the end, yeah, I can blame him for it, but I feel like, he is so new that he's learning at this point. And, a coach can make a little bit of a difference, but 4 goals, I mean, that wasn't a tactical error, right? And they gave up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I hate to be super negative about it, but they gave up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Ken, do you think it's more important that Stom kind of see what he has and the fact that they've only been together for 3.5 weeks, that he would play more pragmatic style, more, bunker, let's be smart at the back, versus going out and balls to the walls, possession, and trying to play out of the back and trying to do his style, I guess you could say?
This is a very difficult answer because I think
Monday
it can
morning
go either way.
quarterbacking as well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it for the fan base, I think there's sort of this: we want to bunker, play pragmatic, and get points and results. We need to see hope in that regard. So I feel like, yeah, that's the way we want them to play. And going into a new stadium, you kind of want to have that hope as a fan base. But I think from a long-term perspective, if you're really going to try and play a 4-3-3, you need to try, and that's the system you're going to build. You need to play to that system. And that goes back to the debate that Clay and I just had, is I don't think we can do it with those 2 midfielders, Harris and Sem, playing in the midfield together in a three midfield setup. So, if we play a diamond, sure, that's a change of a tactic, but is that what we want to do long term? And that's a Gerard Nijkamp question. How are we going to set this team up long term? Who's going to implement it? Stom has to implement it. Stom has to like everything. So, personally, I'd like pragmatic. I'd just like to see some points, because I've just been with everything that's going on in the world. I need some positivity in my life.
But Stom had no reference at all, right? I mean, this is his very first game. He has no idea how well these players are going to play. He has no idea how well his system is going to work in MLS, especially with these players. So, I mean, we saw it with Ron Jans as well. He came in with his 4-3-3 Dutch style, and he wanted to go, possession and attack and all that wonderful stuff that everybody thinks is exciting. And then he got pragmatic after several losses and just said, I can't do it with this team. We don't know what Stom's going to do. I mean, he may ride out 3 games and see what he can get out of this group stage, and then go back to Cincinnati and rethink things. And if we have, more games, later this season or whatever, we may see a completely different change out of him. He just had no way to know. So, this is what he wants to do. And he could certainly train the guys, but until they get out there and play another team, how does he really know? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I'm going to give a couple more questions, then we're going to go into Atlanta real quick. Clay, do you think this result would have changed dramatically? Say we had, Michael Vanderwerth in there versus Kendall Waston or Tom Pedersen, and then the big answer of Jurgen Locadia versus, instead of Regaton.
I can say definitively Jurgen Locadia changes the game. I
$20 million man.
Right. But I don't know about Vanderwerf, to be honest with you. I mean, we saw a bunch of games last season where Waston and Vanderwerf weren't a great partnership in the center midfield, center defense. I don't think Pedersen was bad. I think he kind of was just fine compared to everything else that was happening. I don't know if Vanderwerf and Pedersen are a good situation. Obviously, we won't know until he clears a concussion protocol. I just have a hard time. I think Vanderwerf is obviously a better passer, but there weren't a lot of opportunities for Waston to showcase whether or not he was a good passer. So I don't know definitively about that, but I can't even pontificate. I can't even have a hot take. I honestly don't know. The defense has been bad with so many combination of players at this point. You kind of wonder what's going to end up working. But I can say, with Locadia in the field, in the 116 minutes we saw him, I don't know if he finishes that chance Mane had. I don't know if he shoots the ball that Regaton had a chance to shoot. You can't know, but his presence, his physicality in the center of the field changes the game completely. And that's why he's worth the $10 million. So that's a complete bummer not to have him, for sure.
Okay. Now, I kind of I'm going to have a listener comment here, and then I'm going to have something to say, and you guys can talk me down off the ledge. So Kevin Wallace on YouTube says there shouldn't be a learning curve for Stom. He was brought in to run Nykamp's system. He failed. There can't be a learning period for the midfield. He needs to have that nailed down now. Now, I don't necessarily believe that fully, but there was something that absolutely just pissed me off. And it was statements from the club. There's several club representatives, including Jaap Stam and Gerard Nijkamp. They kept referring to this as preseason. They kept referring to this basically we need to have the correct perspective on this. When is it acceptable to look completely moronic, completely outmatched, completely unprepared with 3 quality midfielders? And then when is it acceptable to get our ass kicked 4-0 by Columbus Crew and then saying, oh, we need to have perspective? Yeah, it's not okay to lose, but we need to have perspective. That's bull. That's embarrassing.
No. Look, we're sitting here thinking a coach with 3.5 weeks is supposed to pull up a decent game against what we've all said is probably the best team in this group. Look, most coaches in a preseason have months before their first game, and they play 3 to 6 preseason matches or exhibitions before they get there. I understand how frustrating it is. You saw me on the live feed. We're all sitting there, just the life being drained out of us, watching the same issues happen to the team. But we're not watching Ron Jans with the same team for 8 months lose 4-0. It's a coach who has barely met these guys, who they can't even practice for more than 90 minutes at a time in Florida because of the heat and because of how many teams are there. And the COVID situation and being away from their families, all these things are compounding on each other. This isn't normal.
The only
and now we expect them to show up and win against the Columbus Crew.
Hold on, Clay.
We really do deserve some perspective here. We should allow the situation to grow.
I'm going to say one statement, and I'm going to let Bill say it. Everything you said there, all the other teams had to go through, other than Stom being there for 3.5 weeks.
Right? They don't have a new coach.
That's the only valid argument you have.
But it's the exact same system.
It's a huge issue.
Stom knew he was coming into. Bill?
We didn't know who the starting lineup was going to be. We didn't know. They didn't know.
Oh, this is fun. So I'm pretty much with Ken on this one, right? I mean, respect for Kevin Wallace and such. I'm gonna also say that I lean with you, Clay, that I think that Kevin's a little off here. All respect to him, but most of your arguments there, you can't use anything about COVID. You can't use anything about heat. You can't use anything about training time, because every single team, that's an equalizer for us. I mean, they're all having the same issues we're having. They're dealing with the same heat. They're dealing with the same, preseason limitations and other things. So, I mean,
but it isn't, because Columbus Crew has had the same coach for 2 years now.
But they're still dealing with COVID. They're still dealing with heat. They're still dealing with less than 90 minutes of training time.
They knew who their starting 11 was going to be. They had an idea.
They had injuries too. I mean, our players, we had more injuries that are critical ones.
This is our preseason. I know no one wants to say that it isn't, but it is. I know the games count, and that sucks to lose these games, but it is our preseason. It is. Yeah. And that sucks. We should have hired.
But it's everybody's preseason. It's everybody's preseason. You can't use it as an excuse. You can't use it. It's everybody's preseason.
So we're gonna put a bow on this. We're gonna put a bow on this. The one thing I'm gonna say, in to Clay's point, a little bit, is you do need to have perspective, but I think there's a middle ground. I think it's acceptable to lose games if you're showing a little bit of progress. Blowing up the system is not there yet, but losing 4-0 is not acceptable. And how we did with Waston looking like trash, with Madunanen just being pulled out of position, which we knew that was going to be his MO the whole year, is tough. So hopefully we see adjustments on Thursday. We trust the coach, we trust the players, but it better not happen again, or else it's going to be really, really difficult.
Y'all gonna have
I'm
a
with
really
you, Brian.
terrible Thursday morning. I'm just letting you know.
No,
If that's your
I'm with,
expectation.
but I'm with you, Brian, on that. I think 4-0 is said something. I just think that we do need to give a little bit of reality that Stom is new to this team, new to MLS. He's brought in to learn or to run the Nykamp system, and yet he failed. But I mean, there is a learning curve. I'm sorry that that's just a reality.
Okay. I agree.
And I think he has to figure out these players and figure out what's going to work.
We got about 15 minutes left in the show, so I'm gonna keep going here.
Don't want to say that the game was bad, so I agree with Bill on that. I just think
game was
patience. We need to have more patience. The game was terrible. I admit it, but we need to have patience.
If we lose 7-0, my patience is gone.
You did lose 7-1. If you remember.
I know my patience is gone. All right, so let's talk about Atlanta real quick. I know Clay, you did some homework on this match. Exciting match. We lost to them earlier this year. We looked okay in spurts through that match. They did not have Ezekiel Barco. Now they do. They have arrested Pity Martinez. They don't have Joseph Martinez. So we'll see what happens. They've kind of gone with a couple different pairings to fill that role, but of course it's not there yet. So I guess we have a little bit of luck there. But Clay, what's something that we can watch out for in this match? Whether it's FC Cincinnati or Atlanta related.
I agree with what was discussed on March to Match Day, and that this could be a very high scoring game. I know we didn't show that against Columbus, but Atlanta's back three, as they normally play it, is still very nebulous. And
yes,
they didn't have a great showing against New York Red Bulls. Red Bulls obviously had that really great counterattacking chance that led to Velo's goal. And that's the kind of goal you envision Cincinnati being able to have. It's what we did against Red Bulls back in March, is what Yuya Kubo was able to pull off against Atlanta as well. I think I think Columbus is a much more solid team through the spine than Atlanta is right now. I'm terrified of Martinez and Barco. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying our defense is necessarily poised to handle them, but I do think their defense is still forming, and Guzan is good, but that's only who I'm scared. That's the only guy I'm scared of on that back four that they have. So I do think if Cincinnati can get a couple good chances off on a counter or build a few good plays out of possession, we can make it a competitive game.
Okay, Bill, what do you want to see out of this match?
A better goal differential.
Progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything better than -4 would be improvement. I would love for us to actually get a goal. I think part of what I saw in the first two games of the season was 2 losses, but in neither game were we absolutely blown away, and we lost by 1 goal in both games, and we scored in every game, right? So this third game against Crew, blown away, 0 goals, so I don't want that, right? So I think that's the main thing is to get the goal differential looking a little bit better. Score, obviously, to do that means we need to have a little bit more possession, and we need to get that front four actually touching the ball a little bit. I know they did a little bit, but let's have it a little bit more. So I think that would be kind of my takeaway.
Van Hedger?
I'm kind of with Bill on that, but I think I want to just see a more stable defense. And if we're going to play Harris, I think we need to. I want to see that Stom try something different with him to where he's not getting pulled out. Whether he's just sort of I hate to say it, a cement block in the middle of the road, and they say defensively you are just going to roam 10 yards this way or 10 yards that way, but don't get too far out, pulled away defensively. If somebody's going to run, don't chase them down. He needs to figure out that aspect. I think that's very important. Again, Clay and I could differ on whether that 3-man midfield works. However, if it does, I think you have to figure out Harris is the route that you have to figure that out of how to play with him.
Mhm.
And I think I just want to see some steps on how can we cover for him and still be productive moving forward.
Good. Yeah, there's possibilities that we might be able to see some lineup changes this week. Look like Van der Voort and Jurgen Locadia had been practicing, so we'll see if they're in any shape to return. Maybe in the 23. There's other injuries. I believe Joe Jiao was hurt, so we'll see what happens with him. Interested to see if Mathieu Deplan gets back into the starting 11. It sure couldn't be any worse than what we had on the right, unfortunately. And I'd like to see Sadul Salam or Zico Bailey play more too. I mean, this is a great opportunity for them. But let's see if we can get a little improvement anywhere. As Gerard Camp said, we need 1% improvement before we need 40% improvement. So, God, just give us something. Another thing I'm interested in, guys, is there's kind of two styles of Dutch. You have the traditional, 4-3-3. I would say total football, kind of, and then you also have the Johan Cruyff 3-4-3 approach, and that's what we're going to see most likely out of Frank de Boer, maybe a variant of the 3-5-2. So I'm really interested to see, Jaap Stam versus Frank de Boer, see how they set up their teams, and potentially see how we might be able to play, going into the future. I think Atlanta United is a good team. They have some mobile midfielders with Pitti and Barco. So it's going to be very interesting to see, the different approaches by two very familiar head coaches with one another. So kind of run out of time here. About 10 minutes left in the game, left in the show here. A couple of minutes miscellaneous topics before we get into our listener questions. Louisville Shitty opened up their new stadium this past weekend, the Lynn Family Stadium, I believe. So congrats to all those people infecting each other with COVID. I hope you had a great time. Go test yourselves afterwards. But it did look beautiful. Any thoughts on that, guys? Bill or Ken, did you guys get kicked out of the old stadium?
No, I left right before it.
Yeah, just your brother. Just your brother did.
Just Brad. That's the greatest picture ever of CST lore. Him just getting talked to by the police officer. Loved it.
I have one question about the Louisville Stadium. It runs east-west. Is that traditional?
The sun, I think.
The
Yeah,
sun
and they're
was
also near like a sewage plant, so apparently it just smells awful.
That's the Ohio River.
That's Louisville.
But also, just like if I saw this in Oklahoma, we saw the texts in Louisville. God, if you're going to be close to players, wear your masks, y'all. They're risking. I mean, yeah, they're working, but like you're sitting right there. You don't know if you're positive necessarily. Just put your mask on if you're going to be in the corner flag next to a player. Come on. Just be generous. Just be nice. Put on your mask. It's not that hard.
All right. No, I agree with you. I think there's some great points and stuff that we need to look at should soccer return to Nippert Stadium.
Yeah, if you want soccer to return, wear your stupid mask.
Wear your mask. Yeah, I was in meetings all day, and I had a mask on from 7:30 through like 1:15 today, and it was not fun, but you do it. Mm-hmm. Of course, it wasn't 90 degrees. Another thing, miscellaneous news, Bill Wolf, you got to pick out your tickets today for the West End Stadium. Is that correct? Or was that yesterday?
Yesterday. Yeah, Monday afternoon or whatever. So, it was only for
spoil anything. Yeah, don't spoil anything, but give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Experience Center, so I actually went there, and they're doing all of the proper safety things. You have to wear a mask. You have to actually sign an affidavit waiving any right to sue MLS or FCC if you get COVID. So they've got kind of a process, and this was for the club seats only. So they're not selling the regular seats yet. They're not selling the Bailey yet, we have some club seats. I'll also, of course, get a Bailey later, but it's a nice experience, and it's I would kind of say it's like a little mini museum of FCC. You get to walk in there, you get a nice little tour. They walk you through kind of the history. They show you some various aspects of the new stadium and how lines up with Nippert and Great American and Paul Brown and things like that, and they have a little model that you can look at and get a real sense of where you would be, and of course if you've looked at all in any of this stuff, there's a lot of virtual stuff out there on West End Stadium that you can look at, westendstadium.com, by the way, and you can look at a virtual rendering of the club seats and the clubs themselves, and so there's a lot of stuff you can do up front, and it was a nice little tour, and then you pick out your seat, and there's not much more to it. They did show us a menu for the clubs, which was exciting. Woo. But beyond that, I kind of knew what I was going to do. I've been to the Experience Center a few times for various fan councils and such, where they held meetings sometimes, and I've ad nauseum gone through westendstadium.com's virtual center. So I kind of knew what I wanted when I got there. But I let them give me the tour because I felt like they really wanted to. And, it was day one. So I knew they were kind of practicing a little bit. I didn't want to say, can we skip all this stuff? But it was good. Actually, I did learn one thing I didn't know. Actually, maybe you learned a couple things I didn't know. So it was worth, I always figure there's always worth doing these things because you'll learn something new. So if anybody has not been looking at the YouTube videos, for instance, of the West End Stadium construction, if you notice, they've been putting cement all the way around the stadium. So all around the stadium's kind of basically cement steps, similar to like Nippert, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously they'll mount the seats into the cement. Well, there's one area of the stadium that has no cement. Mm-hmm. And that's the Bailey. It's just basically metal beams at a diagonal, and they haven't started the Bailey yet. They're not going to put cement there. I did not realize that. It's actually going to be metal, presumably aluminum, but we'll see. But it's going to be metal for the Bailey. And the concept there is it'll be louder. It'll reflect the sound, right? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to maximize the amount of sound that the Bailey can make, not only with a roof, but now a metal floor below the Bailey projecting sound up. That's so awesome. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out in the first games there when we have twice the size Bailey with 3,000 some people standing on metal. And I don't know, maybe we can. It's supposed to be structurally strong, so we could be able to stomp and do all kinds of stuff.
It'll be fun.
Hell yeah.
Corner kicks, rumbling, 3,000 people stomping on metal is going to be a phenomenal sound. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait.
Very cool.
And then, the other thing was, I didn't realize where the county garage was going to go. They pointed that out on a map, so I kind of have an idea now. So that was kind of interesting. But I think they said 800 seats is what they said they thought it was going to be in that one. So that's
cars.
Good too. 800 cars. Yeah, cool. Seats. Yeah, cars.
Very cool. Well,
thanks, Brian.
Guys, let us know what you think when you go to your appointment. I don't know if you're going to be in the club seats like Boston Razzle Dazzle, Brazzle, or Bill Wolf, but let us know. Ken Hetker, I think you got some appointment coming up soon, right?
Yeah, on the 21st.
Mine's tomorrow.
So you sound. Oh, is that Subs? Speaking of Subs, are you just going to do yours via phone?
I'm doing it through Zoom.
Okay, very cool, very cool.
That'll be me and my uncle is going to be the one using the seats, so it'll be me and him. So yep.
Nice. Yeah, you better invite me, pal. All right, man. So segment 5, and this is our listeners' questions with Nicholas J. Superling. Could have called you something else there, pal.
Thanks.
I think we have a couple of listener questions. Kick them off there, pal.
Yeah, we got this first one from Kevin Wallace, who's been active in the YouTube chat tonight. He says, would you rather the team keep struggling while still learning this 4-3-3 Dutch system, or have them try to get results playing bunker ball as a classic 4-4-2 counter-attacking team?
I'll let Clay go first.
Yeah, I'm
wrong.
I'm a person who believes you fight with the army you have, so you play the style that fits the players that are at your disposal. But there's clearly an overarching vision here from Night Camp. And Ron Jans aside, he hasn't, to this point, made any decisions that we are necessarily, critical of, right? We know that the build is still in process. A lot of players are going to be out of contract next season. There's going to be even more new players. Stom's deal goes for 1.5 years. It can go to 2.5 years. I think we have to be patient. I know the first game sucked. It was not fun to watch. It was the same kind of 1 goal becomes 2 goals, becomes 4 goals kind of situation. I'm not defending any of that. But we have to give Stom and Nightcamp the leash to really showcase what this is supposed to be. And if in a year or a year and a half or 2 years it hasn't gotten better, then yeah, jettison out of there. Let's try it over again. But we have to give this an opportunity. If Jans wasn't a racist, he'd still be in this position, and we would be moving forward at the same kind of setup, the same roster, you know? Let's give it,
believe it or not,
a chance.
there were people calling for Jans to come back. Can you believe that? No
What?
place in this club for him. No place.
Thank
Ken,
you.
Where
Bill,
did you see this?
on Twitter.
Well,
that was
Twitter
your
will
first
show
mis-
you
That
what
was
you
your
want,
first
you know?
mistake. Was looking at
Ben
Twitter.
or Bill or Ken?
I was just going to say, I agree. We got to run with the horses we have, and I don't disagree that we have to give the system a try. I maybe disagree with. I don't know how many games we're going to play this year. You know, five games, 6 games, 7 games. You know, if we go play the system for 5 games and get wiped, I'm all for starting to play pragmatic and getting results. So I think it's a balancing act at this point, but I think Gerard has a system that he wants to play, and long term, that's what we're going to go towards.
Bill?
Basically similar to Ken. I mean, I think in general we need to do the system right. This is the vision for Gerard. This is what we want out of our players, out of our club, out of our style, whatever. That means losing some games early on. For me, I think this season is kind of a wash anyway. A lot of people have checked out already with all the pandemic going on. Even if we did get games back, even if fans were allowed, I would say it over or at least half wouldn't come regardless, just because, they wouldn't want to risk it. And fair enough. I mean, so it's going to be a weird season, period. So, I think in my mind, this is a good time for us to try stuff and not do well. I think when we get into West End Stadium, that's where people are going to start getting more serious. There's a lot more money involved in the seats. Obviously, the pricing has gone up. We have a shiny new stadium. There's going to be a lot of attention on us at that point, and people just are not going to be willing to be embarrassed anymore. So I think this is the clock is ticking right now, and this is a great time for us to play the system. On the flip side, I will agree with Ken that if we play 5 games and they are 4-0 blowouts like this, at some point you have to just run with what you have, and we obviously don't have what we need. And that's, I think, a really hard discussion between Gerard and Yop, and the two of them need to sit down and say, okay, you want me to do this 4-3-3, but I can't get it done with who I have here. I mean, it's just not working. You can see the results. We need to make changes. And then, maybe there's a summer transfer scenario possible. I don't know, but we can't go out and lose 4-0 every game, even if it's the right thing to do for the style. But I think long term down the road, we should be trying to push for what we want.
Yeah, I'll give this back to you, Subs, here in a second. I just don't know why, if there's a tactical inflexibility or what's going on. I don't know why we're so married to this quote unquote system. If we had a awesome academy that was churning out players like New York Red Bulls, and we had a list of players, 30 deep that might have a shot to make our major league roster in the next 5 years. Okay. But right now, this is a results-based game. Go for the results. I don't care if you play 5 in the back. We need some damn points.
But how do you get a system if you never work towards one? I mean, if you're always just focused on let's bunker down and just grind out results, that becomes your style. Well, you're the grind it down and
did you watch Houston last night?
I don't
play LAFC.
I don't think the issue.
Who cares if you can still score and get game?
The issue is believing there's duality here. It's not black and white. A good system can win games. You don't have to be like, well, we have to commit to the system and lose. No, you can play your players.
Then.
You can play your players in a situation that sets them up for success that isn't just boring defensive football. I'm not going to be the person here who thinks.
Okay, so it's a results-based game. It's a results-based game.
Right. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to be a person who's going to sit here and pontificate upon Jose Mourinho in 2020 as the best manager in the world. But against Arsenal, for instance, last weekend, he tried a new formation. He did. And the team won. You can set your team up in a better position for a game to succeed. You don't have
Yes.
So I think
Doesn't have to be the 4-3-3.
right, but that's the thing is we hired Nijkamp to do that.
Don't be married to it.
I agree with you.
You just made my point disagreeing with me.
No, I agree with you.
I agree,
with
Brian.
you. I completely agree.
I love you, Clay. Let's
But
move
that's
on.
the thing is we are already like 75% into this commitment, you know? So at this point,
Hey,
it's
we're,
like,
re-
what do you
we're really good at firing coaches after 5 games, man.
I know,
Yeah, we
and
got
that's
some.
why I'm thinking we need to at least give it the gold
Right.
college try. You know, see if it works.
Let's move on, Subes.
Yeah.
I was ready to move on after he brought up Mourinho. All right. This last one is from Captain Mose. Do you believe the midfield or the back line is more responsible for our defensive struggles? Could this be fixed tactically, or is upgraded personnel needed?
I
Both.
think
The answer
threatening
is
family
both.
members. I think threatening family members is the first, but then we can go from there. Joking. One of you guys can go.
It's both. I was going to say it's both. I mean, it's defense. It's a game. We all everybody plays offense. Everybody plays defense. They all have a role at some level. And I was very disappointed in Sem de Jong just because he didn't put any pressure or limited pressure on Nagby and Artur. It starts from that sort of aspect, and you have to work as a team. And I'll give them some slack of like they don't know each other, but it was a whole slew of issues going on. I thought the back line, Pedersen may have had the best game of the back line, and it wasn't good, if you know what I mean. So I mean, everybody had issues. I think it's kind of an equal aspect. If the midfield stops Zelleron on the first run coming down the field, I think we said Kubo could have done a professional foul, and he would have been fouled 10, 15 yards further out. And you've got to be able to recognize that as a team. And so my point is I don't think any one group of players were an issue. I think all those two groups were issues.
We all
I
agree
mean,
there.
I was going to say, if we just want to say, do you believe it's more responsible, the back line of the midfield? I think for sure the midfield had issues, and they gave struggles to the defense to deal with. But for me, I would probably point a little bit more towards the defense. I just felt like our back line did not work as a unit. There was too many times where the wrong person was marking the wrong man. People were left either alone or they literally didn't turn. They were just getting beat down the right side too often. I think there was just too much struggle on the back line in general, and we left Swiss cheese openings all over the place there for goals to be scored. So,
All right. Well, I thank you very much for those listener questions there, Nick.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for sending those in. Of course, if you want to ask our awesome crew a question, feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com is where you can send those in.
You're so good with those taglines, pal. So
And don't forget, we
Natural.
are a great follow on Twitter as well as a cool. I'm going to butcher his name because I wasn't prepared for it. Cool Ranch Luke on the Twitter chat says, "Come on, Facebook is way worse than Twitter." You know what?
Very good.
They're both bad.
Well, speaking of ways to reach out to Cincinnati Soccer Talk, make sure to download the latest episode of Talking Tactics with Coach Goff. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he had DJ Schweitzer on. They had a great tactical analysis of the defeat to Columbus. And then, of course, Brad in Boston previewing the Atlanta match on March Match Day, which is on the Cincinnati Soccer Talk podcast feed. So go download those. Please rate and review them if possible. That's just another way for our fans to find more content about FC Cincinnati. That's what we're doing here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Previews, game stories, podcast, watch-alongs. We're doing as much as we can to promote the good word of FC Cincinnati. So, guys, let's get into our quick final thoughts of the evening. Clay, give us your final thought, pal.
You always lead with me, and at some point I
You're
should
my go-to,
actually.
pal. You're my go-to.
At some point I should think about what my final thoughts should be before you tell me that's my time for final thoughts. So I really understand watching that game Saturday and just being deflated, because it feels like the same problems over and over and over. The ability to make one goal turn into 4+ somehow. It's beyond comprehension. But we do have to recognize that we are in a different place. And the first game was not good, but we need to, until proven otherwise, give Yop the benefit of the doubt. And who knows, we could show up Thursday morning and have a completely different lineup. He is still learning who his best 11 is going to be. And I'm going to choose to lean into the excitement and the positives in that we could see Alan Cruz start Thursday and be a game changer, and Yop realizes how vital he is. We could see Duplan come back and really solidify that side of the field where Gutman instead of Garza. There's so many things that can happen. Or on the flip side, we could see him really commit to these guys that he put out there on Saturday, and that confidence grows within them, and we can see better results. I don't think you would ask a lot of FCC fans that they expected to get out of the group stage. So changing those expectations, looking at how Frankie's improving or how Gutman is improving as a left back, or these little things, this is our opportunity to see who is going to be the guys we can lead into the West End Stadium next season. Let's rally around.
The power of Yop Stom compels you. The power of Yop Stom
compels you.
There we go. Thanks, buddy.
Until otherwise, we got to trust them.
Good work, man. Next time I'm going to say, give us a really long hit, and then you'll go quick. Right? No, I'm joking. You do great, buddy. I love you. Ken Hecker.
That's kind of funny because I was just going to say something, and I think I will kind of. I just wanted to go. I've been gone for 4 or 5 months with this whole thing, and I do want to kind of pat CST on the back of. You guys have been putting out some great stuff. Coaches talking tactics, the March to Match Day, and in the podcast. And I'm waiting for the next podcast of Clay disagrees with everything to come out. And
we love you, Clay. That's why we do this.
It'd be a great show.
It would be. So that way you can get one question in, and he'll give a dissertation the entire time on that one question, and it can be his show. Love you, Clay. It's been great to be back. I really don't have anything else to add. It's good to have soccer, and I'll move on to Bill. Thanks, guys.
All right, the Wolfman. Oh, there you go, Subs.
Right. Oh, man. Okay. So I don't think that the game this week, or the last game, whatever we want to call it, was what I would refer to as despicable. But I would say embarrassing would probably be a good word. I think we can't afford to continue to be embarrassed as a fan group, right? We are known for turning out thousands of rabid fans who make a lot of noise and harass other supporters on social media and have a good time, trying to basically promote our city and our team. If we lose games at that kind of level on a repeated basis, that is going to go away. I think we have a little time. I think, as I said earlier, this season is what it is. I think, going into the West End Stadium, it's got to be turned around by then. So we need to figure this out. I'm not, going to kick the wheels off the bus here. I don't think that we are driving off the edge of a cliff. I don't think that this is the end of the world. This is one game. It went very poorly and it was embarrassing, but it's not the end of the world. I don't think anybody was happy about it. Obviously, Yop Stom did not want that result. None of the players wanted that result, and they need to figure this out, and we need to give them a little bit of time to do that. So I'm going to try to turn positive here at the very end and say, let's have a little bit of patience. Let's see how the next 2 games go before we panic. And then, we can talk at the end of group stage.
I'm going to reserve my harshness, I think, for my final thing. But we are watching. Complacency and excuses are not acceptable, and they will be called to the carpet even through 3 matches. So hopefully we turn around. Hopefully we see progress. I have the faith in the team. I really like this roster. I think there's a lot of good pieces. But that being said, it's our job to make sure we hold the club accountable, and we will do so. So hopefully we see a lot of positivity Thursday. That's God, we need it. All right, guys. Well, there was some good hot takes. There's some good discussions. Please let us know if you liked the new format, what you liked, what you didn't like about it. If you'd like to you see us discuss something else, please feel free to send us feedback at cincinnati-soccertalk.com. That's the only way we get better and we can cater to you guys more. So for Ken Hecker, the Lone Wolf, Bill Wolf, Nicholas J. Superling, and I'm going to leave you last because you're my man, Clay. You're my man. You're my brother from another mother, ginger triplet. Love you, pal. Of course, you're truly Brian Weigel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and tune in. We got a lot of stuff coming for you, hot and heavy. So check out CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com and be better to each other. Good night.